Let me introduce our speakers, Travis Riker and David Hatter from our healthcare consulting team. They're here to help you. Feel free, by the way, to type questions to them using the Enter a Question feature on the right side of your screen, and we'll address your questions at the end. So with that said, let me bring up Travis Riker. Thank you, Travis.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well this holiday season. And I wanted to start with several questions we've heard from our clients and from districts around the state as it relates to the future of healthcare reform as it relates to the national election. And we wanted to just briefly review a couple of things as it relates to the impact the national election will have on Georgia schools. As a bit of a refresher, the Republicans recently gained control of the Senate and also kept control of the House. So the question we most oftentimes receive is repeal likely to happen? And I think what we would warn you is that that's probably unlikely. There wouldn't be enough votes to override the presidential veto unless there would be a supermajority for that to happen. But maybe more importantly, what does the future hold, or what should you expect? And what we are anticipating is revisions or eliminations of parts of the law. Let me give you an example. Something small like the medical device tax is not a big deal. Something like changing the definition of full-time employment from 30 hours to, say, 35 or 40 does have a profound impact on Georgia schools and things like variable hours or substitute teachers. The latest word we have heard is that it is not likely for that to go from 30 to 40 per se, but that there does seem to be some consensus that achieving some middle ground at 35 is a real possibility. So that is going to have an impact on the average hours that a substitute potentially could be working and could influence whether they would be declared full-time or not. Also, the individual mandate, there's been some discussions on what the future holds for that. I think it's a little early to look at the crystal ball and tell you exactly what to expect. But maybe most importantly is the employer mandate, or this potential penalty that could be involved for employers, in this case the school district, if you were not offering qualified and affordable insurance. But we're going to go over some of that today and what those penalties look like today and what the reality currently is and what you should be expecting. Next, I wanted to talk a little bit about everyone's favorite subject, the Affordable Care Act. I know you're all excited to join us this morning to listen about that. We want to obviously go through a couple of things that are timely, as Dale said, relative to substitute teachers. Many of you have heard me say some of this in the past, but I think the timing of the issue is what's most important, looking at measurement, administrative, and stability periods. So I just want to do a little bit of a refresher and then talk about some things you need to make sure you're actually putting into action. And also just give you an update on one other item that is timely and something you want to be paying attention to, which are the IRS reporting preparations that begin all throughout 2015 for reports starting in 16. So as we talk about substitutes, we're all familiar with the definition that we're now at 30 hours a week, and it's based on hours or time paid for work. The reason I bring this up is that some of you actually pay your subs on a per diem basis. So you will be responsible for converting from a per diem to hourly rate. Let me give you one example. If you consider full day in your district to be 7 hours, then you're converting that to 7 hours. However, I would tell you the most conservative approach is to make that 8. Half day, you might say, is 4 hours. Well, that time served would be translated to 4 hours. Some of you have systems that do this for you. Some of you don't have systems and will need to do this based on Excel spreadsheets and such, but it's going to be important that we start tracking that information. And then the ultimate end goal here is, are there any types of penalties assessed? And there's really two types of penalties, major penalties and minor. We're going to hit those just briefly. I'm going to bring this eligibility screen up first just to remind you that you're going to hear me say that health care reform is almost a non-event for most Georgia schools, and the reason is because of this. You, unlike most employers, are already offering insurance to individuals that you wouldn't normally have to do so based on the federal law. So you go down to 15, 17 and a half, 20 hours. So there's a good number of individuals that already have access to insurance that are not impacted by this, which is why you've heard us say that in the past. In terms of the penalties, these begin January 1st. The major penalty, we've called it the death tax, is really a non-event for Georgia schools, at least for 2015 for sure. Could be a non-event even for the future. But the issue is, are you offering coverage to at least 70% of your full-time employees, those that are working 30 hours or more? We are not aware of any school district in the state of Georgia that's not currently meeting that obligation because of that prior slide. In 2000, if you will, 16 and after, that test goes back to 95%, which is what it was initially. This is just a little sample illustration of what that would mean financially, but because this is a non-event, I don't think we're going to spend any more time on it. The one that has gained a lot more attention, and we've had several dialogues about, is the minor penalty. This is where you're really talking about your sub-teachers primarily, could fall into other categories based on job sharing, etc. But if you do fail to offer coverage to a full-time employee, what would that look like? And so that penalty is actually assessed on a monthly basis at $250 a month, but for simplicity, $3,000 annually. But keep in mind, two things have to happen, and these are and definitions. The employee would actually have to go onto healthcare.gov and secure a policy, and also receive a subsidy. I would tell you that due to the challenges of the marketplace and the healthcare.gov website, I think the probability of that happening for most Georgia school districts is quite slim and almost a non-event. I do think that there will be some schools that identify certain number of eligible individuals, but I think you're going to find this is going to be a non-event, and we're going to go over what some of those penalties look like. You might remember that the definition based on state health benefit plans plan document says that these substitute teachers fall as temporary employees which are currently not eligible for state health benefit plan. We received a memo and covered this in our April webinar that August 30th of 2013 there was a little bit of guidance or some light shed from state health benefit plan on what their position was going to be relative to the employer mandate, variable hour employees. Were they going to allow you to offer them insurance or not? And unfortunately, there has not been any additional clarity since August 30th. We are working with State Health Benefit Plan currently right now to gain better understanding where they are, and we will be sure to get that information out to you as soon as we can get that information. But with that said, if you are not able to put them on as employees, how many of you would actually incur that $3,000 penalty? We're going to go over what that looks like in a second. So right now we are on, draw, if you will, two lines on the sheet of paper. If you are on the left side of the paper, which is where we all stand right now, which is do we offer subs coverage, currently the law does not allow you to do that, so you fall on the left side of the paper. That penalty is $3,000 on a calendar year basis, but keep in mind right below that, the only way a school district is assessed that penalty, the only way, is if you go to the actual healthcare.gov website, have a policy secured, and you also are eligible for a subsidy. Now I would ask you, what's the probability of that to happen? And I think you're going to find that it would be very, very small, if any of a possibility. If by some change of events with state health, they say, you know what, we don't want to preclude a school from trying to comply with the law, even though we're not allowing you to do it, we would go to the right side of the page. And we all know that if we looked at the employer contribution to state health benefit plan, it's $7,154 per calendar year. Now that's a good bit higher than $3,000 that you may not be assessed a penalty at all, but you sure are guaranteed to pay $7,154 if all of a sudden you could allow them coverage. So again, you're on the left side of the presentation today. You're not in a position to have a choice right now. And also keep in mind on the right side that assuming state health benefit plan allowed you to offer it, private insurance costs are still going to be higher because your coverage is being subsidized. That's a key takeaway from today's presentation. So what would you do next? I'm going to get into some of the mechanics on things I do want you to be paying attention to, taking some notes, thinking about. Many of you are clients, and I know I've had conversations with you directly, and you're already doing some of these things. Many of the others on the call probably are as well. But the first thing you do is quantify the problem. Is it even a problem? But you're going to need to choose measurement administrative, and stability periods. There's a couple different schools of thought. There's not a right or a wrong way to do that, but the two that we have considered and have heard from clients is to go in a school year or calendar year. Once you do that, you're going to need to gather the data. You're going to need to collect the information on the hours that these employees are working, and then you're going to need to make a calculation on, do we have anybody working 30 hours or more? I'm not going to get into all the details of the transitional rules, but they do allow some flexibility for the first year. I'm just going to keep things very simple for today's webinar. And please, 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 this is the critical time to be doing this right now. You need to be thinking about doing this right now. If you are on a school year basis, you are at the end of the administrative period where you need to be making this calculation and having some awareness. For today, we're just going to focus on existing variable hour employees. So who are those people that have been working there over the last 12 months? At some future date, we will talk about the complexity of transitioning new hires to existing employees. And then you're going to, at some point, need to work on that transition of going from a new hire measurement period to a standard measurement period. But again, we're going to keep things simple for today. That is what a calendar year measurement and stability period would look like. If you were to look at the year we are in right now, and the gray bar says standard measurement period 1. So essentially what you're doing is capturing the number of hours worked by month, by week. I think weekly is more accurate, but certainly you can do the monthly. You'd be going from November of 2013 through the end of October of 2014, which is just recently passed. You're going to collect that information, and then you drop down to the light blue AP, the administrative period. That is the period of time which we are calculating as November and December that you're going to make the calculation. Are those people working 30 hours or not? And then because we're in a position that state health is not allowing those employees to have access to insurance, there won't be anybody in the stability period. There won't be anyone being offered insurance in that navy blue, if you will. But the stability period would be the period of time that an individual is actually keeping coverage regardless of the number of hours that they're working during that period of time. On the flip side, most schools want to be thinking about a fiscal year rather than a calendar year. Even though your budget is on fiscal, your health insurance plan is based on a calendar year. Makes it a little bit more complex. If you're to use that type of approach, you would have noticed that this first standard measurement period was August of 2013 and ended in May. You would have done your calculation period, or at that point would have, in June and July, the summer months, and then your stability period would have started August of 14 running through 15. Even though that's not been a requirement of the law to start it that early, that is a choice you could have done. The DOL is not going to look unfavorable at you trying to do the right thing. But again, even doing a standard measurement period and a calculation during that time is not allowing you an opportunity to add people to state health based on current state law. Remember, the second step we said, first thing you want to do is choose your look-back periods, your administration, and your stability periods. The next thing, second step, is to actually gather the data. This is just a simple way to do it. Some of you have systems that can then calculate this very rapidly, but you're looking at really an Excel spreadsheet view of tracking hours by week. You could put months in there, but you're going to track the total number of hours worked, regardless of what their job title is. For any of those variable hour employees, you're going to track, let's say someone was doing a bus driving attendant after school, but also doing substitute teaching. You would need to aggregate those hours in that particular week or month. But you're going to track those hours by week or month, and you're going to then make your calculation. Keeping in mind, and this hasn't been put to the test by any school district across the country, but there is a special look-back period for educational institutions that say you cannot count breaks of service of more than 4 weeks against the employee. As an example, the employee is not in a position to be able to work during the summer months, so you can't count that against them in reducing their average number of hours. And at that point in time, you're identifying your 30 hours a week. And then you at least have an awareness on how to set proper expectations with your board on what cost actually would look like. Are we going to incur any penalties? What would those look like? I can only share with you the results that we've seen from dozens and dozens of research and calculations we've done ourselves. We have never seen from districts as large as 4,000 to 10,000 employees more than a dozen possible employees that would ever even reach into a position of working more than 30 hours. In fact, the vast majority, over 90%, had less than 5. A good number of them had 0. So regardless of all this complexity, what are the odds that you're going to have someone working more than 30 hours? I don't think that it's a high probability. But here's what I do want you to be thinking about, is that we're unfortunately in a time period that if you haven't done something, you need to do this quickly. But what do we do moving forward to make sure that we're managing this problem, if there is one, effectively? So what you want to be doing is putting processes and systems in place, whether they be electronic or even paper-based or Excel spreadsheets, where you're actually looking at this calculation ongoing, you're looking at it quarterly, and you're giving yourself alerts on, is there anyone actually getting close to that 30 hours a week? And do we need to change work behaviors? Do we need to bring in a different sub? Or if we can't, because this is a long-term sub and they're a quality individual and they do a great job in the school, you just need to be aware that they could hit the 30-plus hours, depending on how much they're working. The last thing I want to do before I turn it over to David is just talk about one final item. It's something that I can give you a glimpse into the future. It's also something that I am hoping that we see changes to. Relative to the employer mandate, there are certain requirements that employers, i.e. school districts, do certain reporting to both individuals as well as the IRS. The initial regs were released in March of 14. They recently, on August 28th, released the draft reporting instructions. So they've given you kind of copies of the forms, what to be thinking about, and essentially what you're going to see on there is you're looking at detailed reporting by month by individual. When did you offer them coverage? What were they enrolled in? How much did it cost them? And this is all from an employee's perspective. So you need to be harmoniously thinking about how payroll, and in this case maybe your benefits administration system, or really the unknown, what is state health doing? We need additional clarity from state health benefit plan, and again we put that ball in motion on what their role essentially will be from August 30th of 2013. They need to be letting schools know what you need to be responsible for versus what they're going to assist you with. However, if the past is any indication of the future, I would tell you to be thinking about this right now. We will certainly be happy to send out these the detailed reporting regulations as we have them now, but just keep in mind that these are drafts. The final regulations are supposed to be out by year end. Given the amount of changes going on with healthcare reform, I don't expect that to actually happen. So then your next question is, do I really need to be worried about this? I think we prepare for it. I think you need to be thinking about it, and then if for whatever reason it does get delayed, then that's just a blessing and one that I hope will actually happen. Last thing I would tell you is that these reports are things you're going to be doing throughout 2015 with the first report due sometime in 2016. So you do have a little bit of time on this, but again, it's something I want you to be thinking about. So 2 key takeaways. Take care of your substitute teachers right now and your variable hour employees. If you've done it, good for you. If you haven't, please, please, please be thinking about this and run your measurements. If you need some assistance, we'll be happy to take a look, give you some counsel, things of that nature. And then second, IRS reporting is here. We're not sure what changes there will potentially be, but it seems somewhat clear what their expectations are. And then be putting the processes in place this coming year to get ready for 2016. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to David.
Hello, this is Dave Hatter. Delighted to be with you this afternoon. In our April What You Need to Know webinar, one of the things that we were able to do at that point was share a lot of new information that was coming out of state health about the financials and the future of state health. We have a little bit of information, a little bit of new information. Most of the things that have been going on within state health this year have been things that you've been paying probably a lot of attention to, things going on from an administrative standpoint, benefit design, and it's all current. So just a quick reminder for those of you that are fairly new to this process, state health benefit plan falls under Department of Community Health, very large. It's about a quarter of the trust, and it's 650,000 state employees, teachers, school personnel, retirees, and dependents that are all in that trust. State health making up a quarter of that. There's $10 million of claims per day. So when we go through the financials and you look at these numbers, I just want you to have some perspective on sort of the volume and the size of the plan. Some events that happened this year that you're all aware of. Just wanted to think about the timing of this. January, State Health changed the plan designs to reinstitute the copays for medical and pharmacy. That was a very expensive decision, but we'll talk a little bit more in just a second on why that was done. And then April 2014, the Department of Community Health approved no change to the employer contribution rates for both certified and non-certified for fiscal year 2015. Again, another very expensive change for the state, a welcome change at a board level. So these were some expensive election year gifts really that occurred in 2014. Adding back the copays to the HRA plans, just to put it into perspective, the current fiscal year, that's about $115 million cost, projected out to be an annual $115 million cost for 16 and 17 fiscal years. Also, holding the line on the $150 per employee per month annual increases was also very expensive at the state level, and again, a welcome change at a board level. And then no rate increases for the HRA plans in 2015. These were three things that were done. You know, you can make your own assumptions as to why they were done. Our assumption is these were election year gifts, and 2015 is not an election year. So legislative session will begin soon. We'll go on in the early part of next year, and much will be decided. If you're able to, you can go online and look and see what some of the types of topics that they're going to be reviewing in this upcoming legislative session. I currently don't see anything in there that would have a major impact on state health, but it would not surprise me if some of those things were sort of late additions. And then also, really the state of the financial recovery will drive changes in terms of the future of state health, what fiscal year 2016 and 17 will look like, how well really has the state recovered, and then how generous, therefore, would they be willing to be at a board level. So just as a review, fiscal year 2014, annual results were to the positive, $158 million, leaving a reserve fund balance of $375 million. The current fiscal year was forecasted to about break even, which would leave the reserve fund balance right at about $380 million. We still don't know at this point where we're running sort of plan year to date with state health benefit. Not a lot has been released at this point. But really the impact of those three election year gifts start to take effect fairly quickly. And you can see fiscal year 2016, almost $300 million in the hole, and fiscal year 2017 about $600 million in the hole. So really setting the stage here that changes to benefits, changes to contribution strategy, and changes to cost sharing between the state and the board will be necessary in order to make sure that state health remains viable long term. So if you remember, originally the state health contributions that came out for your classified employees looked something like this. Fiscal year 2014 was going to be $596, $945 for your certifieds. Fiscal year 2015, where you are right now, was supposed to be $746 and $975, and then 2016 we were just doing this guessing a little bit north of 1,000 based upon some actuarial data that's pretty consistent that we've seen from them from the last 5 or 6 years. They came back and revised it again during the election year to certifieds seeing $945 again, classifieds at $596 again. And so, you know, what does the future hold? We're really not sure. You know, at this point, there's not enough information to know what fiscal year 2016 would look like. But the prevailing thought that has come from a lot of the leadership around the state of Georgia is that they could just reinstitute that $150 a year increase. They could hold the line, and they could go more than $150. And again, a lot of that's going to be driven by the state of the financial recovery, and then also the legislative agenda for this coming legislative session. So I'm still unsure of what that future is going to look like. This last item, the tipping point you see from this red line, is that we're still a good bit below this tipping point. There will come a time if they continue to increase the cost of the classified plan they still give the school districts the option to opt out of the state health plan. There is a potential that through those increases they could reach the tipping point where a handful of schools at first would leave the state health plan. But this is still so far off into the future without knowing that there is even a tipping point at this point. And something I brought up in April and I want to bring up here again is that there are other states where school districts have been given the right to leave the state plan, and even in Tennessee, where there's roughly 120 districts, they've been able to leave the state plan for a long time. They lose no funding if they leave the state plan, and still only 9 of the 120 districts in the state of Tennessee have actually executed on that. So I don't see that becoming a major factor anytime soon. I know that several school districts have put a good bit of time into this, and but just our professional opinion is that is not imminent. I think state health is really the place to be for both classifieds and certifieds for the foreseeable future. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Dale to give you a little bit of forecast in terms of where we may be coming up next, and then also we're going to be taking questions here shortly. So. We are going to open up the side browser, see if anybody has actually typed out any questions. Give us just a minute to review these and start addressing these kind of one by one. We'll also, once we get through these questions, we'll certainly take it off mute and give everyone an opportunity to go through that as well and see what else we can do to help. Let's see the first one. Let me try to just do these slowly. Bear with us. Will you email us a copy of the PowerPoint presentation? I think we might do you one better. We're going to send out, this was recorded, and so we're going to actually take these, our comments, the content, put this together in the link, and you can share this with others in your office. Thank you, Steve Smith. How do we know if or when a substitute teacher goes to the exchange for coverage? Wouldn't you like to know? Here's what I can tell you about the exchanges so far from personal experience. The first step in that process is you're going on to log on. It took me personally, someone's been doing this 15 years, about 25 minutes just to get my basic information about who I am, where I live, who my employer might be. So I say that last point only to let you to know that there is a section that asks for the employer and a contact person, your name and phone number, that they are likely as an employee going to be reaching out to you to verify employment information and things of that nature. See, that is our best guess at this stage on how they're going to do it, their verification. One of the things I did not mention, probably should have, and it's around this, is that the Supreme Court has agreed to hear the case on whether subsidies will actually even be offered to employees. As you know, Georgia is a federally facilitated marketplace, and the law currently says that federally facilitated marketplaces are not eligible for subsidies. So there is going to be some consensus around that very soon. Whitney Lawrence, where can we find the reporting instructions? I will send them out as an advisor. Please be advised that there's going to be some stuff in there I'm probably going to want to customize prior to sending out, but there are some links attached that show you samples of the actual forms. In fact, I probably won't manipulate the file, but you'll need to take a note. One of the questions I have is the government going to treat you as a self-funded employer or a fully insured employer? The reason I say that is because technically you're in a self-funded trust through the state, but to you it just feels like a fully insured plan. There's no liability or run-out claims or anything like that. So I'll actually probably send you the whole document, just reference a couple different sections so you can be thinking about it. One of the reasons we haven't already done that, Whitney, is because we have not gotten any clarity on what state health position is. But again, I want you to at least be aware of what this looked like since you've asked. Steve, it must be my lucky day. Must we use a calendar month as first through last day of the month?
Most of us have cutoff dates for payroll which run mid-month to mid-month. I don't know that I've actually encountered that question. I don't know that there would be a problem with that. The only thing that I've understood, Steve, is running that. Let me actually do a little bit more digging on my end. That's a worthy question that deserves a thorough response. Haven't run into that one before, so let us get back to you. Let me scroll down a little bit more here. That one we've already addressed, electronic presentation. Again, if you're still on, we're going to, I have a couple of key takeaways. One is to package up this presentation, the electronic copy this with our recording, as well as to send you the IRS reporting requirements as they are, and then some additional clarity on calendar months, Steve, which is an excellent question, knowing that your payroll necessarily may not run 1 to 1/30 or the first of the month of the 31st. So we'll follow up on those 3 items. And now that's the only written responses we've had. Doug, can you help me take this off of mute in case anybody wants to verbally ask one? Kim Novice, you are live, at least showing on our end. Kim, do you want to ask a question? I haven't heard anybody. Could be a technical difficulty on our end. I'm showing that it's live. Both Alicia and Ann and Kim are showing live on our end. If for whatever reason something is going to get precluded from being answered or we can't hear you, we don't want to keep everyone else off. We're showing it live on our end, but if you guys just want to send me a response, let me get to the last slide that's got my contact information and David's as well, and then you can certainly reach out.